sorry I lost the battery power there, but I'm continuing with the story of the Rothschild Trust New Zealand Limited. I've shown you the pictures of the Broughton beer products, of the son of Rab C. Nisbet, the cover for the companies that are law companies affiliated to the Rothschild cabal in Edinburgh, Glasgow, and I think also Aberdeen. And I've done Earl of Roderick Francis Arthur Balfour a gross injustice by accusing the family of that being the young boy that I saw on the tennis courts on the Newton Don estate, very near to which I was born into the world. And that Earl of Roderick Francis Arthur Balfour is actually an adult, and he's quite mature actually. Here's his registered details. This is companycheckcode.co.uk, director /905 904 842. Roderick Balfour holds 3 appointments at 3 active companies. I think we find a lot more than that on these listings, but this could be one of several directorate registrations for the same person. He's resigned from 35 companies and held 5 appointments at 5 dissolved companies. Roderick began their first appointment at the age of 39. The longest, so this is the Balfours that partitioned Palestine and are involved with the Balfour Corbetts and the Robert Louis Stevenson dynasties and all of the globalism projects. And these are the people that own the legendary House of Shaws, and everything that they do is interlocked to fascism. And they're very near neighbours of mine, and they've refused to give me jobs on the River Tweed, presumably because I'm rather too insightful for their liking. The longest current appointment spans 15 years and 2 months at Mizar Limited. Okay, the combined cash at bank value for all business where Roderick holds a current appointment equals Zippo, with a combined total current assets value of £8,672 and current liabilities of £101,000. So they're a wee bit in the red. Okay, this bit I want you to know about. Short name Roderick Balfour, year of birth 1948, registered address, care of, that means that he's maybe leasing an office, or maybe he's reluctant to give his real registered address, but he's care of on the official business registry for our country, Turkin Connell, Prince's Exchange, 1 Earl Grey Street, Edinburgh, Scotland, EH39EE. Now that is even closer to Sean Connery's birthplace. It's further up Lothian Road, and what I want you to see is that Turkin Connell is also on the official British Business Register, and I've tried to get them to defend me as a marital solicitors company. They've got loads of registered companies in Earl Grey Street, which I've visited several times. It's very near to where our Students' Union was at Heriot-Watt University, okay, and it's right opposite the brewery sector where Sean Connery was born. And so there's Turkin Connell Trustees Limited, there's Turkin Connell ISA Nominees Limited. That's the tax break savings schemes that you get. In both of those companies they have Zippo in either cash, net worth, assets and liabilities. Turkin Connell Wealth Management, also Zippo at the bank, no assets, no liabilities, nothing in any of these companies, because they know I'm coming at them, and I've already approached them along with all of the solicitors south of Perth and down into Northumberland to defend me in my innocent marital plight. Yeah, I'm not in a plight, I'm on the higher ground. All of these bastards are stealing from their customers and the nation, and none of them pay any tax, as we'll see later on at the bottom of this list. Okay, Turkin Connell Company Secretaries Limited, same address, 1 Earl Grey Street, Edinburgh. Turkin Connell Asset Management. Oh, this one's got some assets. They've got 2 million. They've got cash of 447,000, and they've got liabilities of 1 million. So that one's solvent. Then you've got VT Turkin Connell Investment Funds, City Financial Centre, 88 Borough High Street, London, SE1 1ST. Turkin Connell in brackets PEP Nominees Limited, Prince's Exchange, 1 Earl Grey Street, Zippo, 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 Zippo. Turkin Connell Executive Protection Limited, they're defending people in the executive sector who are actually immune from prosecution, because most of the companies are limited liability companies now. Isn't that clever? This one is really erroneous of them, and I spotted it as soon as I tried to get Turkin Connell or any of the Edinburgh solicitors to defend me in the marital proceedings, because they do not understand the significance of them declaring that one of their Ponzi shelves is a shelf co. Okay, Turkin Connell Shelf Co number 1 Limited dissolved since I discovered it, and I sent the emails to every one of those solicitor companies between Perth and Newcastle. That's Anne Glolag's Perth, where Levy and McRae do the dirty on everybody that would like to walk on her estate, civilly and peacefully. The citizens have been removed the right to roam because these companies are grandiose in their theft projects. So that's Turkin Connell Shelf Co number 1. A shelf co is simply a laundering tool for a Ponzi scheme. Dissolved. Yeah, 1 Earl Grey Street, Edinburgh, EH3 9EE. Okay, that is how insightful they are to the rules and the laws of our countries, and that is how bold and brilliant they are in laundering everything out of our country and even out of our country's government's treasuries. Scotland does not have a government treasury because it just gets a little cash bung every now and again from the criminals at Westminster to shut the fuck up and to carry on with suppressing and stealing from their people. That's Nicola Sturgeon, the lawyer. Yeah, okay, so Turkin Connell are one of the vents that Roderick Francis uses. Let's go back to the one note that we were looking at. So there's Broughton Secretaries, and there's the Rothschild Trust New Zealand, and I started this off just a few items back up that page. So Broughton Secretaries are also I thought they were, Broughton is, it's either a school or it's a town in the Lothian region in the Edinburgh district, or it's a suburb in Edinburgh, and I think they used to have a rugby club, and it may well be out towards Murrayfield. That's the Murrays that are in the Aberdeen Asset Management Dunedin sector, and that is the Murray that asset strips Rangers as many times as he can get away with it, which is forever as far as I can see. There is no law enforcement in Scotland, and if there is any, it's run out of fetties by Tony Blair and all of those criminals that run the Ponzi schemes and the Cairn Energy scams. That's Bill Gamble. Yeah, a friend of George W. Bush's. George W. Bush attended Bill Gamble's wedding in the city of Glasgow. That's the city of culture that Rab C. Nisbet also jokes about. Okay, so this lot are in Welbeck Street, London. That's why there's a Welbeck in the England football team. Are you beginning to get the picture? Short name Broughton Secretaries Limited, year of birth unknown, because this is another directorial scam. It's registered as a secretary and a director, but it's actually a fickin' massive company at 7 Welbeck Street in London, W1G91YE. So this is only the first of the companies that we began to investigate since we looked at that link to the NZ company that is registered as a trust in NZ, and the registration as a trust means that there's a total immunity from tax, which is why Sir John Wood uses that scam up in Aberdeen when he's a BP oil magnate, and he is stealing from all of those poor people that went on strike in the INEOS strike at Grangemouth, and he's scamming all of the big buildings in Aberdeen and making them corporate headquarters as the university shacks up in buildings that will be blown over within a 20-year time span, because they're exactly the same as the Hollywood building. Yeah, I think that Welbeck that plays for England is Danny, but I'm not terribly sure. Earl of Roderick, Francis Arthur Balfour, registered at Company Directors Association, Associated, and here is the link in this big cabal at the New Zealand firm to Instant Companies, 2004 to 2. So they've been employed between the 10th of April. Sorry, that's March. 10th of March to the 22nd of April 2004. That's quite a long period of time for one of these thin blue line companies who are just a massive laundering tool. Let's have a look at what they've crashed. So there are 122,700 companies in total. 120,340 of them have been crashed. Okay, really efficient fraudsters, and that's equivalent to the Brighton secretaries that we referred you to yesterday on the woman who was another Rothschild with directory ID called Hannah Mary Rothschild. Okay, so you've got the links to the massive laundering companies, you've got the deployment of law firms like the Burness solicitors, and they are, I think we've yet to discover their details. You've got other companies also running this NZ subsidiary, Collier Bristow Secretaries, appointed in 2004 when Tony Blair swept into Iraq. Swifton Corporations also appointed to do the dirty on the laundering jobs in 2004. Okay, then we get to Lothian Road again, and I've already in that earlier video shown you how it's commonplace directors now on the first of the Lothian 50 Ponzi schemes that we opened up. I forget what the number was. This is number 620. Isn't that sinister? Yeah, so this is not Cairn Energy, which Gordon Bowden has profiled in great detail. These are Rothschild run companies and Balfour run companies. Yeah, it is an international scandal that they can get away with it, and the police whose pensions are screwed and have to retire as quickly as they can before the pension fund diminishes any further. They're now working, I think they said they were 18-hour shifts when they attend the protests at the UN protests to defend the tyrants that run the world this way. They have to drive in their minibus all the way to London. They have to stand in the way of the impoverished protesters, and they know that they too are impoverished, and their jobs are very soon going to go to G4S, which is run by Malcolm Rifkind, who is now registered. He was registered with John Anthony Chilcot at Abraxa at 50 Lothian Road, but because of the revelations Gordon Bowden and I have made, they've had to flit, and they've flitted to Earl Grey Street, or to a very leafy part. I forget which suburb they're in. It is one of the very posh parts of Edinburgh, and the location is relatively irrelevant, but you can see that that is Lothian 50 in brackets 620 limited. Yeah, and when you search for Lothian 50 and you look for an arbitrary number, they go up to at least 4 digits. That's thousands of Ponzi shelves run by the Rothschilds, the world owners, and run by law firms of the magnitude of Burness, and we've not yet seen what they do. Okay, but we've seen the Turk and Connell organisation are so naive that they're allowed to use the shelf label in their corporate details, and when I visited the corporate shelves, I discovered that they were also in the Channel Islands, like the companies that we linked the Flemings to the other day. That's the Channel Islands where the Barclay brothers are resident on, I think it's Sark, and the princes were going to live there with their new wives. That's the Royal Prince and Kate the Commoner, having her second baby at the moment. Yeah, and they bailed out of the Channel Island concept because I exposed all of the frauds down there, and the people that were on the tax justice network who are citizens of the Channel Islands, I forget the name of the person, but he was a Facebook friend of mine, and he was quite up for a chat when I first joined him. And the man who wrote the book The Treasure Islands and the Men Who Stole the World is also, that's Nicholas Shaxson, he is also a citizen of the Channel Islands. The people that live in the tax havens get treated like shit. They are just bit parts, and that is the electorate on the Falkland Islands that choose every time Mrs. Thatcher demands them to do it, to elect the English option and to stay loyal to NATO's armies that are launched just off Argentina into what is also a fraudulent oil sector. They've got oil exploration scams in the very deep water surrounding the Falklands, and they registered it as an oil find, but there is nothing there. Yeah, it's all just a virtual products scam, like almost everything that is run out of 50 Lothian Road. This one is run by the world owners, and their senior officials are unaware of the implications of declaring that they are a shelf code. With links, when I visited the website first, they've changed it now, but they were very, very proud of their links at Turk and Connell to the Channel Islands. Yeah, and everybody else, even the people in popular culture, realise that the Caymans are havens. They realise that the Caribbean is a haven. They realise that Florida is a haven, and everybody realises that Delaware is a haven now, and almost every state. And Norman Lamont wants to make Orkney have the same status as the Isle of Man. And in the earlier video I made yesterday about the Isle of Man and the people who wear the white police helmets there, it's the same with the Brighton secretaries and the Brighton directors. The police that John Patterson is talking to are wearing the same helmet, and on the badge of that helmet they've got the affiliation to the Crown and on the Isle of Man white helmet they've got the mummers symbol of the 3 legs running relentlessly round as they do the Morris dancing, and they take the piss out of the stealing of the assets of the world in a haven where the man Furhop, that's Tiny Rowlands, was interned under prison before he was released to launch the Lonro Empire on the very unfortunate world in the Republic of South Africa. Tiny Rowlands also asset stripped the whole of the Newcastle region before Lord Patton moved in there as the boss of the university for a time. Yeah, and they are tied in to the massive scams of Algae Clough, which is a cover for another Clough, as we disclosed the other day. Yeah, Algae Clough is a virtual oil and gas fraudster like Bill Gamo and the Cairn Empire, and this is the Rothschild Empire that we are only just beginning to scratch the surface of. Okay, let's go down a wee bit more and see what else I've highlighted for you. Rothschild Trust Corporation Limited. I've not had time to open that up, and it's really difficult. So here's the Burness Directors Limited, and I cannot get this site to open because it's so massive. Okay, this is a law firm in Scotland. I think it's Aberdeen, Glasgow and Edinburgh. Okay, Aberdeen is where Salmond started in life as a politician determined to achieve independence for Scotland. The little fat bastard could have had independence for Scotland because I gave him all of the information that reveals all of these crimes run out of the Bank of England and all of the Trident scandal, and he completely ignored it, which is why he resigned on the first day after their official defeat, aka the selling of his country was announced, and the referendum is totally staged. The whole of the SNP cannot be contacted as a corporate entity. None of their MSPs are contactable. Some of them, like Jenny Mara, were contactable on Facebook until they realised that the whole lot of them are just a sham to keep that fourth tier of political governance in Britain alive and well, as it continues to steal from all of the taxpayers and the ratepayers across our country, and the people that run small red budgets in their own home because they cannot afford to pay for the energy bills that are being thrown at them by the European conglomerates that are massive Ponzi frauds as well. That is the Gazprom scams, that is the big six energy companies, that is the Centrica run by John Hood and run by John Major, the Prime Minister, who's privatised all of Scotland's nationalised assets, and Norman Lamont was the Chancellor in that period. Yeah, all of them are traitors and profiteers. Okay, Mr. Andrew Jonathan Hughes Penny, Mr. Christopher Keith Lepelli. Now I've got nothing to pin on them. The Burness Directors, you can open that and you can see their corporate details on their websites. It's just like the other law firms that I've described. I've talked about Brodie's, I've talked about John Lamont trading there, I've talked about Freshfields, Thingaby and Derringer, and the Derringer is the wee gun that is associated, you know, with the spying sector and the German munitions industry. Yeah, it is absolutely ruthless. Richard Michael Baldock, David Lawrence Harris's. Yeah, they keep cropping up. He bailed out in 2008 when the banks were crashed. Burness Solicitors, more on them. Previous secretaries. So Burness, the solicitors firm, do the secretary job, and that will have no ID. The reason I cannot open it is because it's so corrupted and so massive. Let's see how many. So 1,054 companies, 836 of them crashed. Okay, and they are previous secretaries just before Earl of Roderick Francis Arthur Balfour of Palestine fame. And we showed you the other day the Palestine companies that are run by the Flemings in the healthcare charity sector as a joke, because they think that the people are too thick to absorb the fact that that is just a geopolitical fraud and another crime against the poor people of Palestine who never get a life. And that is because they have got oil wealth offshore. And that is now in the hands of the Balfours and Winston Churchill's bloodline, yeah, and all of the power brokers that run the world forever, or since the religious fraud in the Piso sector was perpetrated. Here's another Lothian Ponzi shelf, Lothian 50, 621 Limited. And I've shown you that the Moffats and all of the local names run all of these. It's not the world leaders anymore, and that is the reason that they are quaking in their boots. So yeah, what I've said here is massive shunting through London Ponzis and Lothian Ponzis. And what we've got is a company called Old Bond 43 Holdings. Remember that this is just one of the directorships in that New Zealand label that we started on, that I've opened and investigated, and all of these Ponzi branches and law firms are breaking out of the roots of that. And the roots of it are in Auckland in New Zealand, run by the world's owners from the other side of the world. Old Bond 43 Holdings Limited is run by 3 directors. Directory and secretary details are extracted from annual returns, and the latest annual returns for Old Bond 43 Holdings Limited was filed for the period up to the 31st of 12th 2013, when we get really active as fraud researchers, but Gordon Bowden will not allow me to go to the top of those trees, or to the root of those trees, depending on your perspective. Gordon prefers to talk about people at the bottom of the food chain, and he talks about them relentlessly, and he's been locked in with the villains at the BBC talking about the same topics. Yeah, everything that they have reported, we have reported together, and everything that I'm now describing is massive compared to his little scratching of the veneer at the top of the wardrobe. Okay, Collier Bristow Secretaries Limited, Mr. Dominic Alexandru Piestro Giacon, Etro Solid, and another Italian or Latin looking name, Matteo Maria Silvio Eugenio Soldati. Broughton Secretaries Limited again, Collier Bristow Secretaries Limited, John Anthony Kingset, Mr. Alan Ruthven. I used to play rugby against an Alan Ruthven at Melrose. This one has got 2 other names beyond Alan Ruthven, so it's Mr. Alan Ruthven, Burden Cooper, Mr. Donald Newell, and then you've got the Mainwaring Robertsons again. In the videos I've made with John Patterson about the HSBC, the Arab UK Chamber of Commerce, and the Borders College, and all of the Michael Moore scams, and all of the massive, the Mainwaring Robertsons are both on the London Stock Exchange directorates with the people from Italy who are the head of the European Central Bank. That's Mario Monti's bloodline. It's a woman, probably his daughter, possibly his wife, that is on the London Stock Exchange directorates with the Mainwaring Robertsons, and that is the Captain Mannering Dad's Army joke. They have trillions at the bank, and John Patterson has been wowed by all of that information, because when we made the video on that issue, we were actually discussing the religious fraud and the interlocks to the people in the Barker families and in the Oxford, the dogs that are, so the Springer Spaniel is a joke about the authors and the translators of the Christian Bible, and I can't remember, it's the Springer word is the vital word in the publishing company that became the Maxwell publishing empire out of Oxford. That's the Maxwell that was disappeared off the back of the boat. Yeah, and his people in Czechoslovakia are in the same place in Czechoslovakia as the spies that work with Bredenkamp, the weapons trader. And it's pissing down. You can see the sleety rain beginning to hit the windows. Okay? And this is all the intel deceit and the laundering deceit. And my wife used to accuse me of being like Robert Maxwell. I cannot understand what she was trying to say to me, and that was because I would disturb their sleep patterns in the night. Yeah, my wife is a total traitor to innocence, and all of these people are our heroes, and are probably our paymasters, which is why I'm going to relentlessly pursue them in law, because I understand what a shelf coat is, and I understand what the asset stripping of a healthcare profession is, and it's simple to understand when you understand the human condition and how the brain works and how the heart works based on the ion channels. Yeah, and God entirely understands how those ion channels can be used as a physiological switch, or they can be used to switch off the vicious lifespan of these criminal thieves that own the world and persecute the world's children. So that's old Bond. Do you get it? That's the linkage to the James Bond lineage, and I showed you in that earlier video on the Balfour, before my batteries run out, that James Bond was born in the Lothian Road region. Yeah? So you've got the Dad's Army joke now, and you hear it again and again. And this is, so Mr. Mark Alistair Mainwaring Robertson. Yeah? There's a John Robertson Wright. He's also involved in the massive frauds, and he links in to the Scott dynasty and the links to the Scott woman is the famous joke about Lord Hollick of North London, and they made a movie featuring Miss Scott, who's an American actress, and she meets the cabal that get persecuted in the Leveson inquiry. The Leveson characters are also directors in the Rothschilds listings, and the Leveson is related to the Duke and Duchess of Sutherland who sent the colonists to the colonies. Okay? And here is the joke about the merde. Okay, so we've got the Mark Alistair Mainwaring Robertson, Mark William Gordon Palmer, Mr. Morland Herbert, and the Palmer who played the Doctor in the George III movie and used to be a commuter out of Berkhamsted like me. He's the one that was the Doctor that treated mad King George III in that Hollywood movie, and because they portrayed mad King George III as mad, I believe that he would have been one of the innocent monarchs that ever lived in our country, and he would be persecuted for his innocence by the criminals around him. And Palmer knows me because he comes to fish in the Colditz Hotel that has been sold into the Big Four auditors' toxic debt pool, and it is now part of the Krupp's Schloss Hotel empire. That's Edinburgh House, and Edinburgh is a joke about the Old Testament in the Bible. Okay? Mr. Morland Herbert Julian Agnew. This is the occasions when the citizens can read and write, they have to apologise for taking us to war. Okay? So the bottom two companies on this massive list of frauds run by the Rothschilds out of Auckland, London, Edinburgh and Aberdeen is Tyrolese directors. And when Andy Stewart sings about the Scottish soldier, he acknowledges that the Scottish soldiers die in massive numbers in the Tyrol, the region of Austria, near where Hitler was born, and the Innsbruck joke, and the joke about no room at the inn in the Christmas story. Isn't that tragic that Scotland does not own any of its mountains, but the people who do take the piss out of the war dead again and again and again? And that's the Andy Stewart that used to sing the Barren Rocks of Aden, and I've shown you the videos showing the Christian cross being carted on the back of a military truck through the Barren Rocks of Aden, and I've shown you all of the jokes about the under attack region where they have places like Lauder, and all of that takes you back to Perseus in the Roman court, and that is the Percies who are the Dukes of Northumberland, who run the Poison Garden and host Harry Potter, and eventually are the cause of death of Marcus Aurelius. The actor was played by a Harris, and all of the cover-ups of the Harris and the Rolf Harris crimes and the deployment of Rolf Harris as the prize in the Lib Dems fundraiser for Michael Moore, all of it is now a cover for the role of the owners of Butlins that sacked me as an innocent fraud investigator because I was investigating their paymasters that live right next door in Hertfordshire. That is the Rothschild dynasty that we are describing here. Right then, let's keep going down, because they will not stop. They are right at the bottom of the burning pit, but they keep doing the crimes. Collapsed NZ Trust below, and some of the Lothian Ponzis, the Barren Rocks of Aden and the Scottish soldierage joke extended by the thin blue lines of the Tyrolese. So I've already explained that to you, and this is now a link to Reading, and I've told you in previous videos how the spoken wheel model works, and at Reading University they have a thing called at government.uk plc, and that is a massive fraud where the university hosts Ponzi shells that are run by people in the Pritchard family that were friends of mine, that attended our wedding, that pretended that they had their franchise busted and that they were bankrupt and had to work as gardeners like Hitler did in Barcelona. And what they have is a massive empire. That's the Pritchards that I can get you, if you're interested in the frauds that they commit. And they have sent their children to the corrupted universities that are run by the people who are the head of the Students' Loan Company. That's Bath University. Bath University is part of the globalised pharmaceuticals fraud, and I've been an external examiner there. They are really, really ambitious, and all of the university leaders in the Russell Group are massively at the trough. Okay, so the Reading, the at gov.uk plc scam is fronted by Princess Anne at the hub of the wheel, and the Pritchards just play a bit part laundering role in the middle of the spokes. Okay, and that is the typical syndicate that steals from the world. So in this case I've highlighted a company called Montague Place 2007 Management Company Limited. Okay, 0637 4661, registered address Pinnacle Property Management Limited. Yeah, this was launched in 2007. Beach Court, Reading, Berkshire. Okay, and this is just another arbitrary selection from the Rothschilds listings. And you've got the Rothschild Trust New Zealand Limited now. Can you see how it's just a crashed series of words without any commas or full stops? and instead of it being a series of graphs where we can look at the timelines for their crimes and their frauds, it is just now totally crashed. And that is what has happened since I began to archive the frauds. Yeah, I could directly translate everything that happened up to about a year ago straight onto my OneNote profiles, and I could then launch it straight onto my web pages without any editing or any fiddling about with screen captures, which all of the images up here are now, I'm forced into making them screen captures. But the blight of that is that when you look for Google images, and I don't know whether or not they realise this, that these images are now beginning to appear in the Google images searches. They have shot themselves in the foot, as they always do, because they are so greedy and so ruthless that they do not stop to think about the implications and the reputational hazard that now looks likely to get them jailed for life as national traitors unless we bring back the death sentence, which John Patterson and I were discussing only yesterday. He's greatly in favour of that. I am not, because what happens when you have a death sentence is that the corrupted juries in the Freemasons and the corrupted judiciaries that are in the secret societies run by the universities and are totally ruthless, they will have the innocents killed instead of the villains. I know how to shame the villains, and I want to teach the innocent world how to do that, and that will change it forever. Right then. And the Montagues are the Dukes of Buccleuch, and Sarah Montague is one of the propagandists at Radio 4 Today. Who are propagandists? They are liars, they are traitors, and they tell all sorts of economic lies, and they engage all of the fraudsters on the Rothschilds directorates to give their economic expertise lectures as they steal from their customers, and they run massive debt pools that would have their properties dispossessed if they were citizens, but instead the citizens lose their home when they go a few £100 into debt or cannot pay their rates. Yeah, it is ruthless. It is fascism, just like it was in the days of the Third Reich, and just like it was in the days of the Gettysburg issues and the revolution that culls all of the poor, like the Napoleonic cull. And then when the troops come home, they get abused by the Freemasons and the tank commanders. And that is now beginning to get me empathetic responses from the border citizens who realise that they are working men. And I've had a couple of hugs today from people, that are in my family group. I've not seen them for years and years and years. They're aware now of what I'm trying to do and the massive crimes of the Jedburgh Sheriff Court and the cover-ups of the Freemasons that run it, out of the speculative society in Edinburgh, and using the link to Andrew Lothian that 2 videos ago I was trying to tell you about. Look up the video I have made on Jedburgh Sheriff Court, Sheriff Drummond, my gagging order, and the culling of the returning troops by the Freemasons, and the gang-bang rape of Andrew Lothian's wife by the sheriffs and Andrew Lothian's colleagues in the law sector, in the Lothians, where he is just a diversion for these massive financial frauds. He's now working again as a fraudster in the IT sector. Yeah, and I know that because I've seen his images and I've seen his directorial details, and all of that is a cover. The Stormouth Darlin company that crashes the pensions is in Edinburgh. It's in 50 Lothian Road, and that is Peter Stormouth Darlin. Yeah, and what they have done is to close the innocent little real estate company in Kelso that was run by the penman. Penman gets persecuted again and again, and the man that used to be my family solicitor appeared in the supermarket this afternoon. I've got all his director numbers and I've got his links to the Exeter set too, and I've got his links to the Kelso ice rink and the curling sector. Okay, everybody knows that I know what they do now, and they are reacting magnificently. They're talking to me. The horsey people are looking really inspired by what I'm telling them, because they can make our country great. And if their country were great and prosperous, they could have a whole stable of horses instead of having to struggle to keep one or two decrepit old nags. Yeah? And it is really encouraging that the people can see that these crimes are dismembering our children's futures. And I don't think Sarah Montague has any guilt. And the Duke of Buccleuch, his dad lost his legs, was in a wheelchair like David Murray for a huge chunk of his life, but all of them have the people in their thrall, and all of the people, even because they share the name Sanderson, you know, school chums of mine, they live in the same sector that, that the Sanderson cabal are brought together in my hometown, and Sanderson is the criminal that negotiates the fish quotas and lives in a massive mansion at a place called Broughton near Melrose, right underneath the Eildons, and he's one of the owners of the River Tweed, and it's corrupted management now. Okay, so there's the collapsed listing of the companies, and let me just take you briefly into the Lothian setup. It is quite amazing. And that's again a list of the Burness Solicitors, Rothschild Trust New Zealand Limited, and you can see that that was launched into the world when I was in New Zealand. So it was launched in 2006 and it's still live, and all of the things that we've got to pin on the Balfours are no longer on the Balfour transcript, because Balfour bails out of his 3 roles in this company, the last of which was bailed out in 2006. Okay, so this is the one with the Pennies, the Harrises, the Baldocks, the Mayhay, and you've got the Rothschild Trust New Zealand Limited right at the bottom, and you can see that that goes as far to the right as the graph goes. The rest of them are exposed by their local neighbours and the people who cannot get a job and are living on a pittance. I walk around with the holes in my shoes to show them that I'm determined, to show that I'm making a sacrifice for my country that none of these bastards are prepared to make, as they steal from our country and empty its treasury. In the papers today they are talking about the next coalition between the Labour Party and the Conservatives. Okay, I'm going to stop there, and I think you're seeing now that Lothian 50, with its 621 companies, what else can we get? We've had a good look at Turk and Connell. Let's have a look, and there's their ordinary web page now. It no longer proclaims that they have links to the Channel Islands, and it no longer lists Shelfco 1, Shelfco 2, Shelfco 3. When I wrote to them, I said, do you understand that that means that you're acknowledging that you're running a series of laundering frauds? And they said, we're not in that sector, we are just divorce solicitors, and I don't want to talk to you unless you want to talk about the fees that you will pay for losing half of your home. Yeah, they are completely moronic, and it's the same with the accountants in my hometown. I used to play rugby with them. They do not understand what a Ponzi scheme is, but they advise people on how to invest their money. And the Ponzi schemes that I was discussing with them are run by Michael Parkinson and the cricketing man Jeff Boycott. His companies are called Boykes, and he uses the same fraudulent launderers that are used in that massive epicentre of fraud that is One Park Row in Leeds. Yeah, and Leeds is riddled with Freemasonic influence, and it is just vicious for the whole of our country. Same with Bristol, same with the Liverpudlian region, and same with the Birmingham region. Okay, right then, we could have a little look, and I'm very keen for all of you to get to know how to use the so there's Roderick Francis Arthur Balfour. Shall we have a wee look at what he has been involved in? Row Trust Nominees Limited, Browalia Holdings, Miser Limited, Lothian 50 620, Lothian 50 621, Lothian 50 622, Galileo 2000. Let's have a look at Galileo, another set of interlocking Ponzis. Yeah, I'm doing this live, I have not... Oh, fuck. Princeton Limited. We've heard about how Woodrow Wilson at Princeton was coerced into extending World War II from 1917 to 1919. Yeah, that's a sexual scandal, and his coercion people were the two Jews that were launched into the Supreme Court in America. Row Trust. Sounds like the Rothschilds. Detroit Lakes, we're into North America now. Mill Valley Road, Pep 1, Pinta Limited, Miser Limited, Lothian 50, 620. Oh God, there's... Oh, look at them. 620, 620, overlapping as director and secretary. This is the fucking Balfours. My neighbours. No wonder they did not give me the job on the river. Yeah. Every one of them is an interlock and an overlap. So Lothian 50 621, 622, and Galileo. Let's have a look at that. 2,000 Ponzi shelves. Lothian 50 718, 718, 735, Guildford Limited, Botafogo Limited, Yale Limited, another corrupted university that runs the wars. Every one of them have funding that is secret, like the Law Society in Scotland. It's slush fund, so that it can create companies like Arnott Manderson, and it can run everything on behalf of the corrupted crown. Rothschild Trust Corporation Limited, as bold as brass. Yeah, still active. Accounts filed, director 2005 to the present day. That's the Balfour. Okay, I'm going to have a wee look at that, because I had a look at it the other day and it is also full of shocks. But first, before I stop, and remember that this is only the 15th of 280 directorial links that I have checked up so far. It's going to take me a lifetime to track them down, and I'm hoping that God will catch up with them first, or they will come forward and ask me to help them take the world back to decency. I doubt very much that they will resort to that. It's too honest and too open. But these are the crimes that the parental generation have made, and I keep saying that David Cameron is much more innocent than Tony Blair can ever be. His crimes are genocidal. These people are caught up in the legacy of that, and they may have the capacity for greatness and to create global civilization after all of these years. So what was I going to look up? Lothian 50, Galileo 2000. Okay, Galileo, was he the man that discovered that the world was round instead of flat? Or was he the one that challenged the papacy? Like Henry VIII, and every time there's a little tiff, all of the women folk get their heads lopped off, or they have their babies when they're only 14, and all of the rest of their life is a life in fraud and being shagged by the Rothschild dynasty in a very illicit way that leads to the ownership of the world. That's Queen Victoria and all of her children beyond the first. That was Marcus Manuel. Okay? Let's find that 2000 company one. And you must realise now that the Lothian companies are massive. And also, if you look for Lothian in a random search, you get the Lothian Borders Police. Yeah? And everything that I've reported has been reported to the Lothian and Borders Police, and the number of people that have turned over as the head of that relatively local force. I told you about the Hendersons trying to marry me into the bloodline. You know, when I first came back from university with all of my education beginning to fill up my educated head, yet they knew that I was born to do this, and they tried to marry me off to one of the daughters of Police Superintendent Henderson from Hawick. Okay? I don't know where she is now. She was lovely, but you know, I do not want to have my sexual affiliations chosen for me. But in the end, I now know where my wife was trained, and I know where she was raised, and I know that she is in that capitalist stop at nothing to steal from the people sector, and she's ever so proud of it. Galileo 2000 Limited. So, and there's a Navarino. That is another one of those films. I think that was about people in Greece and, you know, being involved in fighting the Nazis. And I can't remember what the film was, but you can see the links to that. The Heroes of Navarine, or whatever it was. But Galileo is a scientist and a logical person. Let's see what the scam is here. So this is a Balfour in a company that is affiliated to all of the Rothschilds interlocks to New Zealand, and look at all of the subsidiaries and Ponzi's. This is why Gordon Bowden, and this is not going to open quickly. It's still live. It was launched in 2005. It's still live. Let's have a wee look. Registered address: Prince's Exchange, 1 Earl Grey Street, Edinburgh, EH3 9EE. That is Sean Connery territory. Come on, come on. Be a good boy. Just scan down. Nope. Okay, so we now click on directors, and its net worth is minus £883. Okay, right then, this is the first time I've looked at this. There may be no surprises, or it could be, you know, an absolute mafia scam. Mr. Andrew Jonathan Hughes Penny, Rothschild Trust Corporation, thin blue line for one of either its secretarial role. The next one is this thick blue line. Okay, Rothschild Trust Corporation Limited, Burness Directors Limited. I cannot open them. It's so massive, and they have so much to hide. Burness Solicitors. Okay, that's the law firm, also in the city of Edinburgh, in Glasgow, in Aberdeen. Earl of Roderick, Francis Arthur Balfour, thick blue line, relatively thin blue line, but it is almost a year's service. Mr. Andrew Jonathan Hughes Penny, Mr. Richard Michael Baldock, okay, and Judith Ann Mayhew, Kate Louise Booth, and Rothschild Trust New Zealand Limited, which is where we started. Yeah, it's a similar structure, and this is just the number 2000 could mean the year 2000, and that is when some of the people started as directors of that company. It's still live and it is still covers the whole of the globe, yeah, and this bit is still live. So that's the corporate directors at the top. The individuals have all bailed out. So that is the Rothschild Trust Corporation Limited. Let's have a look at that. So we're into a situation now like the Fleming family the other day, where we're going into subsidiary after subsidiary, all with massive directorships, all with world famous people in them, and the Rothschild mention is just a corporate registration. They have no birth date, they are institutional directors, okay? But the people like the Balfours are playing the real roles in that, and I've explained to you how, because of the exposure and because of the resignation of Prime Minister Singh in India on the Karen scandal, after he was resold the busted shares by David Cameron and Bill Gamel's company, yeah, the Prime Minister in India had the decency to resign, but our lot are still at the trough. But Cameron is much more innocent, and he's not nearly as genocidal as Tony Blair, Tony Linton Blair on the Business Register, blessedly exposed by John Patterson, who has at long last begun to talk to me again, and the videos we make are in a synergistic situation. I don't know if John Patterson understands the magnitude of the white hat fraud and the the parallels between the Brighton laundering sector, which he's not yet visited, and the Isle of Man, where Furhop was jailed as a Hitler Youth member and then released into the diamond sector, the gold sector, and all of the frauds in the Lonro and Lonmin sector that lead to the shooting of the blacks in the pay round. Yeah, so the white hat is an icon for fascist policing, and John Patterson is getting help from the police in Brighton. Okay, do you get the picture? Right, so we could look for Galileo, or we could look, let's just, as an experiment, so remember that this is just one company that we've looked at, the New Zealand company out of Auckland, and we've gotten into all of those scams and scandals and laundering vents and cover-ups from law firms that use the word shelf co openly and trade out of the tax havens openly without realising what the significance of that is, until I come along and ask them if they would be prepared to help an innocent person to confront the corrupted law enforcement sector in Britain. But because I can get everything pinned to their directorates as crimes, none of them will take me on, which is why I intend to litigate against them, even if they strip me of my own home. I will not relent. Right then. That's you, Mrs. Tom, in Gala Shields, where it was snowing heavily yesterday lunchtime, yeah, with all those corporate details and all the links to the Gala Chamber of Commerce and Michael Moore's empires and all the links to the Borders Council, where you used to be employed as one of their law enforcers, and all of your links to the old people's homes sector and all of the citizens advice bureaus with different middle initials. That's you, Patricia, from Canada. I don't know whether or not you have a British passport. I'm going to come back at you for everything that you have done to me and my kids. Right, so let's just hit the word Lothian. This is why Andrew Lothian, the rapist, has been launched into the world and defamed by the Law Society, which is why, exactly the same reason why in my hometown the solicitors firm that is Stormouth Darlin, and it's really a real estate firm now. It's been closed. It's been handed over to the people at the Cullen and Kilshaw organisation that are on the board of the globalised KPMG subsidiary that is in charge of the Sloss hotel chains, and the head of Otago Polytechnic was a director at KPMG in New Zealand. He's still on the fucking listings. That's the Polytechnic that my wife used to work for, and they sell the virtual oil and gas scams out of Queenstown, which is sort of ironic because Queenstown was never visited by the Queen, and even if it was, the Queen is not legitimate. That's the Polytechnic in New Zealand. Yeah? And all of it is twisted, and I've explained to you how the interlocks and the professorate at Otago University have been planted by the Brits to steal from the Commonwealth, and none of them have shame on that, except the Lamont family, who are now beginning to see that the magnitude of the crimes that they're committing against the people and the students are abhorrent, and at least they are trying to effect some sort of conscientious policy reversal. That's the elders in the family. They're really decent. They talk to me, they have me in, and they talk to me in their own home. Okay, so Lothian. Okay, 1,111 companies. Can you see how difficult it is to get clarity? And as always, the top listing is in Ireland, where Michael Moore came from. Okay, and where the Cahills come from, that are also in the Exeter registries and are the shareholders on the companies that Valerie Jane Lees is registered in. Yeah, and all of her visits to the south are absolutely coincident with the periods with which she was registered. I was not allowed to go on holiday. Yeah, it's amazing. Lothian Limited, Dunedin House, Auckland Park, Mount Farm, Milton Keynes, Buckinghamshire. My wife trained with a company in Milton Keynes too, and the Milton Keynes empire is part of the golfing fraud empire, and it is part of the Bedford Falls joke too. Lothian 42, yet the Ponzi shelves are all lined up. It's shameless. 1,111 companies, directors, many of whom will be corporate entities like the Fleming family directorships and like the Rothschilds. That's the only thing, and we've only gotten into the 15th listing of the directors for the Rothschilds, and it's taken me 3 days to cover that criminal ground. Okay, Lothian 42, Lothian 47, all at 50 Lothian Road, Festival Square, Edinburgh. EH3 9WJ. I went there. I did not have the courage to go in. I need to have some people with me, and I've got the very man for the job. He's about 6'5", yeah, and he understands that the takeover of Parliament Square by the corrupted law firms is a breach against the citizens of Scotland, who are actually the registered owners of that whole of the massive buildings around the St Giles Cathedral. And right across the road you have the law courts and the city council. Okay, and that's the city council that runs the Parliament building fraud and the trams fraud. Lothian Lending Limited, Lothian Digital Limited, Lothian Gardens Limited, Lothian Secretarial Limited, Andrew Jonathan Lothian. That will be him. Let's open that. Andrew Lothian, the lawyer, the shamed man who's the date rapist, the gangbang of his wife. His wife gets dispossessed of half of her home. She comes to live in the Borders region, if that is to be believed. And I believe that it is to be believed, because one of the the Duke of Northumberland's people, that's Perseus from the Roman court, yeah, they have acknowledged that that person does live in the Borders region. I will not tell you the town yet for privacy reasons, but it's just a cover for the crimes of the Rothschilds all the way from Dunedin and Auckland into Edinburgh. And that's why I'm so fond of the book about the persecution of an innocent and the sacrifice of an innocent in the French Napoleonic Wars. The book is called A Tale of Two Cities, and the actor in it is Robert Donat, who also plays the role of Mr. Crisp, the Goodbye Mr. Chips, and that is a joke about the culling of the English schoolboys in the conscription campaigns that their prime ministers are prepared to engage in on their behalf. Shall we open Andrew John Lothian? Oh, look at this. Mr. Rupert George Maxwell Lothian Barclay. Can you see it? The Maxwell of Oxford off the back of the boat, the Lothian linkage and the Barclay linkage, which is actually a joke about barley, and that is the fields of gold joke. Lothian Shelf 119, Mr. James Stuart Lothian, Mr. Alexander James Lothian Wilson. Yet there are thousands of them. I can't see this time the Lothian and Borders. Oh, there it is. Lothian and Borders Police. Lothian and Borders Police. Okay? I don't know why they've got the same label twice, but there's only one way to find out. This is the people that receive every one of my emails. Every one of my emails goes to people that I call, I forget what they're called, enlightened listeners. And the Lothian and Borders Police are on that list. They used to have a Facebook page until I started to post horrific facts about how they steal out of fetties, and led by the Metropolitan Police, who are intel experts out of MI6 and MI5, planted into our country to steal from it. That's Stephen House and Lord Stevens of Kirkwelpington, and Tony Blair's namesake Ian Blair. Okay? Registered address, Fettes Avenue, Edinburgh, Midlothian. Isn't that ironic? Tony Blair's school, Bill Gamel's school, friends both of George W. Bush now, and the envoy to the brutalised Middle East. Oh, we don't get much details. It was the same on their Facebook page. Yet there are no directors, there are no profiteers, because this lot are going to be taken over by Malcolm Rifkin's G4S. Yeah, and that is Lord Condon's G4S. And the Stevenson character that sold all the secrets to Andy Coulson, he's on the companies that I've discovered recently that interlock to the Dukes and Duchesses of Roxburgh. Okay, non-limited business. Non-limited. So they might be liable for crimes against the people. Public security and law and order activities. Public order and safety activities. They've got a company number, but it's quite unique not to have a directorate, senior executive. What's the odds on it being John Smith? I cannot wait. A vast intake of breath. Oh, look at that. It's like the war bond scams run by Bing Crosby. Yet in Germany, it's Johann Schmidt. In Scotland and Britain and England, it's the most commonplace name in the world. Yeah, for the English speaking world, John Smith. That means it's a fraud. It's likely to be a theft project like all of the others that we've exposed. Yeah, and when they're exposed, they change the CEO to that person, so it becomes undetectable elsewhere on the business registry. I'm going to stop now. They tried to marry me to the superintendent's daughter, and there's nothing wrong with her, she was lovely, but I do not like to be pushed into other people's bedrooms by the people that are running our world corruptly. Okay? And I'm delighted that the people with a conscience and the people that work in the horsey sector, that work in the racing sector, that work in all of the sectors that are blighted by these frauds, yet even if they work in financial services, they now know that they are in a shameful position, because their generation have stolen everything that I took for granted, and the Prime Minister also took for granted. That's Tony Blair, that's the current Prime Minister Cameron, yeah. And what they're seeing now is that if you steal from your country, you get the axe of God, or your children get it, or your spouse get it. And that is the straw that has them quaking in the corner of these directorial boardrooms. Okay, and the spates of resignations, even in the Lothian and Borders Police. It's a woman now, Sinclair, who I reported all the crimes and the Ponzi schemes and the sovereign debt crisis for the world to, has bailed out. And all of the people that refer me back to the police departments, they've got the case numbers for the Trident nuclear weapons scam. They've got the videos that I've made pleading with the Justice Secretary and his administration that are miles from the Justice Secretary's office, hundreds of miles. They're in Inverness or Fort William, he's in Holyrood. Yeah, it is just a massive fraud. The whole of the geopolitical running of our world is a fraud, and all of it is coming pouring out unless they put my blood on the pavements. And if they martyr me, it will come pouring out even more quickly. So watch your step, Miss Sturgeon. And David Cameron, please, please, please get in touch. I know that I can conciliate, I know that I can take the world back to decency, and I have all of the facts that mean that all of the people that participate in the running of the world will be obliged to take the step down that will take the world to decency and civilization. Not so sure about Melvin Bragg. Yeah, and thank you for your attention, and I'm sorry it's taken so long. We're only on the 15th directorate of the 200 and I think it was 290. Okay, bye bye.